There are several different LEGO Star Wars sets depicting most of the Rebel Alliance ships seen throughout Star Wars media, and today I wanted to rank every Rebel ship and vehicle depicted in LEGO Star Wars based on these different LEGO sets. So a few rules and considerations I set up for myself for this ranking is that these ships are ranked both on the quantity and quality of these different sets, as well as everything included in the set such as minifigures or side builds, not just the actual build of the ship. I also mainly look at playsets, UCS sets and other similar kinds of sets, not miniatures or microfighters. The first set I want to talk about is the Rebel Scout Speeder seen in a couple of sets over the years. This pick is very similar to the Imperial dropship that also made the last spot on my Imperial ranking, and also for similar reasons. To be honest, I think the Imperial dropship was way cooler both in the original battle pack and the two sets that followed, as the Rebel Combat Speeder was nothing too exciting, and honestly getting a bunch of fleet troopers is not that cool to me. I would much rather get some Rebel Pathfinders, Endor troopers, or some Hoth troopers. Moving on, I want to talk about the Escape Pod, seen in several different Escape Pod sets over the years. Now, I classify this as a Rebel vehicle as it is an escape pod from the Tantive 4, so it deserves a spot in this video. These sets were very cool. To me, the standout set was definitely the 2012 release that had a good shape and size of the escape pod and some very good minifigures, but even the 2016 set was pretty good too. This is a set that I expect to see a remake of next year for the 50th anniversary of A New Hope, as it is long overdue for a remake in general, and it makes sense for the 50th anniversary. Moving on, what might be a relatively controversial take is putting the home one this low on the list. The home one in universe is very cool and something I would probably rank higher on this kind of list if it were just for the ship, but it is just severely underrepresented in LEGO form. We got two sets depicting this ship in LEGO. The first one is simply an interior kind of set that is half home one bridge and hangar and half A-wing, and then a midi-scale set much later on as well, which is very nice but honestly is a set that is very easy to forget about. As this is the main capital ship of the Rebellion, I think it probably deserves more. Maybe some kind of playset at the scale of the Star Destroyer, or even a UCS set, although I really cannot see that ever happening. Very similarly, I want to talk about the Nebulon B frigate. This is actually one of my favorite large-scale ships in Star Wars. I think the design just looks very cool and it is such a cool concept. However, in LEGO we once again barely got anything based on this ship, the only set being the Comic-Con exclusive midi-scale set. This basically was the first set launching the Starship Collection style of sets, but unlike the Starship Collection, this is much harder to come by and ridiculously expensive, although I am going to try and part the set out and build it for myself. A playset wouldn't really make much sense for this set, and a UCS set could be very nice, but once again I doubt that will ever happen. Then moving on, I want to talk about the Rebel Combat Frigate. This is another pretty cool ship in universe that didn't get much in LEGO Star Wars, but for this kind of ship it makes sense that we only saw it once, as it isn't nearly as recognizable or well known as the others. This set from Star Wars Rebels is incredibly iconic today though, but mainly because of its minifigure selection, specifically Rebels Ahsoka Tano. This Ahsoka minifigure is the main reason this set is very valuable today, and on its own the minifigure can go for around $300, more than half of what the set is currently worth sealed. To be honest though, I am not the biggest fan of the set and how the ship looks in general, and if it wasn't for that Ahsoka minifigure, it wouldn't have ranked higher than the home one or Nebulon B. Anyway, moving on to some of the more iconic Rebel fighters, I first want to talk about the B-Wing. The B-Wing is such a cool ship in universe and I am sad to rank it this low on the list, as I think the ship is very cool. But similar to previous ships, it is sadly very underrepresented in LEGO Star Wars right now. We saw this a total of 4 times in LEGO over the last few years, one of which being a UCS set in 2012, but the most notable playset was the 2014 version, which was the last time we saw the B-Wing entirely. Pretty much all the Rebel starfighters have seen multiple remakes since 2014 in some way, but for some reason the B-Wing never got a new version, which is very disappointing, but it will probably appear in the next couple of years. At least I am very hopeful. A ship we see a few more of is something like the Snowspeeder. I am not really a massive fan of Snowspeeders in universe, but I think there are some very good LEGO versions of the ship, both from the playsets to the UCS sets. We actually got to see 2 UCS Snowspeeders over the years and several different playsets, the most recent one being in 2019 for the 20th anniversary of LEGO Star Wars, and of course the junior set in 2020. As cool as these sets are, the Snowspeeder is not entirely accurate to what it should look like. It is a bit too big, I believe, and the windshield piece is not the best fit for the Snowspeeder, as it just used the generic piece used for some older X-Wings and Y-Wings, made all the way back in 1999. We do, however, see a new piece for the Force Burner Snowspeeder, so hopefully we see that for a new Rebel Snowspeeder somewhere in the future as well. Another Rebel fighter we see a lot of is something like the A-Wing Starfighter. We have seen many of these over the years. The most recent version of the Rebel A-Wing in its own set was in 2020 for the UCS A-Wing, and before that we had a standalone A-Wing Starfighter playset in 2017. After that we still saw a Resistance version, a Juniors version, and another small version in a Smart playset too, which isn't a part of this ranking really, but still shows how many A-Wings we actually see. We have seen many good sets over the years with an A-Wing included, either as the central part of the set or as an addition to another build, which is always very cool. And my personal favorite set including an A-Wing is the TIE Advanced vs A-Wing from Star Wars Rebels, including a great A-Wing and TIE Advanced build and some very good minifigures. Moving on, I have to talk about the Phantom from Star Wars Rebels. This was a new small ship released in 2014 for Star Wars Rebels, and the original set was very good, but we did get a better version in the future as well. In 2017 we saw the Phantom 2, which is actually an entirely different ship in universe, but I decided to classify it all under one ranking anyway. And this was a great $25 set that not only had a great build for the ship, but some incredible minifigures too. The Kanan Jarrus and Thrawn minifigures are just incredibly good for a cheap set like this. We also saw it as a small side build for the 2023 Ghost, which looked very good at this smaller scale and fit the set very well. And on that note, I also want to talk about the Ghost, which I think many people would actually want to see a bit higher on this kind of list. I ranked this a bit lower than some of the following sets, as despite having 2 very good playsets, which of course is more than enough in the playset department, we still really should see other versions of the ship in LEGO. For example, a Starship Collection set at the size of the Millennium Falcon, and a UCS set as well. This is the type of ship that could be done at a minifigure scale similar to the Millennium Falcon, and it has proven to become one of the more popular modern Star Wars ships, similar to something like the Razor Crest even, which of course deserves the UCS treatment. I think it could make for one of the best large-scale Star Wars sets, and I think it is very necessary, as despite how good these playsets are, this scale just doesn't depict the ship as well as it could and should. A personal favorite of mine is something like the U-Wing Starfighter. This is probably a bit of a biased pick because I just really like these sets, both the 2016 model and the 2025 version. Despite the downsizing and issues, I think it is a very good set. Similar to the Ghost, I think a minifigure scaled UCS set could be very good too, but it is not as necessary for a set like this really, so I am not too bothered. And I think the playsets were completely fine, and it is the type of set where a set for Rogue One and a set for Andor made sense, and we don't need anything more from it. Then onto some of the more iconic Rebel vehicles, I want to talk about the Y-Wing Starfighter. In universe, I never really cared too much about the Y-Wing, but I think the LEGO sets depicting it were just very good all around. This one dates back to the original years of LEGO Star Wars, It had some UCS sets as well and several different playsets, the most recent standalone version being the 2017 set, which was absolutely perfect for the ship. But later on we also got a Resistance version and a small version as a side build for the Yavin 4 Rebel base. We will also see a new Rebel Y-Wing in 2027, which is one of the sets I am most excited for next year, so far at least. Onto the top 3, I want to talk about the Tantive 4. In universe, this is also one of my favorite large-scale ships, and the 2019 Tantive 4 set is also one of my favorite sets of all time, and a white whale set of mine. But I rank the Tantive 4 lower than the rest as we don't see that much of the Tantive 4 in LEGO. For one, we haven't seen a UCS version in ages, and this is actually the kind of set I would have expected to get a new UCS set these last couple of years, and I think it still could be possible next year for the 50th anniversary of A New Hope. We don't get many playsets either, basically one every 10 years at this point. We did see a midi-scale version though, which is quite nice, and actually one of the Starship Collection sets I want to get pretty soon. And the boarding the Tantive 4 is also worth mentioning, as it is also technically a Tantive 4 set. As much as I like this ship in LEGO, it doesn't compete with the two to follow. Moving on, I of course have to talk about the Millennium Falcon. This is arguably one of the most iconic ships in all of Star Wars, and has one of the most iconic LEGO Star Wars sets too, being the 2017 UCS Millennium Falcon, which is actually retiring this year. We have seen so many different Falcons over the years, and we'll see many more in the future too. I think the two best Millennium Falcon sets, other than the UCS version, is the 2019 playset from The Rise of Skywalker, as well as the 2024 Starship Collection set, which is widely considered one of the best Starship Collection sets ever made. But to me, the best rebel ship depicted in LEGO Star Wars has to be the X-Wing Starfighter. I really like the X-Wing in universe, but what really sparked my interest for the ship was the LEGO Star Wars sets around it. Specifically the 2012 X-Wing. This was one of my first ever LEGO Star Wars sets, and growing up I just loved it so much, and I still have it on my shelf to this day. Of course, we saw many new and objectively better X-Wing sets over the years, and despite the extreme amount of these sets over these last few years, they all still feel a little bit different, with new minifigures or new features in newer sets. We also have 3 different UCS versions of the Rebel X-Wing, which to be honest is a bit much, but it makes sense for this kind of ship. This honestly might be a bit of a biased pick for the first position, but still I think it deserves its spot. Let me know what are some of your favorite Rebel sets in the comments down below, and then I will see you all in the next one. God bless you, and cheers.